Jeremy Hutton from the campaign organisation Migration Watch, which campaigns for reduced immigration to the UK. Jeremy Hutton, I guess just boldly on the figures, you're disappointed by this?
On the size of the backlog, yes, it's absolutely baffling that over progressive years it has just risen and risen and risen. And only quite recently does it seem the government is really trying to reduce it. And now that they are trying to reduce it, they are doing it in the most irresponsible way that endangers public safety and will probably only attract more people to make that dangerous trip to the UK.
You're talking specifically, I guess, about the questionnaire proposal for kind of effectively substituting for a face-to-face interview. The argument the Home Office put forward is very straightforward. 95% of people from these countries will get it anyway, because you start from the principle these are people who are coming from a dangerous place. They meet the basic criteria. You just have to stream out those who might be coming for another motive or might be pretending what they're not. So presumably this question is designed to do that. In principle, is that not a pragmatic response when you've got all those other groups like Albanians, for instance, where you regard them as being a country that doesn't have that right, and they're the big surge of numbers coming on boats, so that you can give them the proper attention to weed out people who are economic migrants and all the rest of it? Doesn't it make sense to take this category and say, we haven't got enough resources to do everybody, so we're going to simplify the process here in order to maintain the quality of the process there?
Yes, I understand it from a pragmatic point of view. There is an argument, except it's not really those 95% of asylum seekers from Afghanistan that we are necessarily concerned about. It's that 5% who, because of this new system, might not be subjected to the rigorous checks through an interview that they usually would, and might cause trouble, such as the Afghan asylum seeker who quite recently, it revealed, had murdered a young man in Bournemouth. People do slip through the cracks, and if we're not going to properly scrutinise their record and their story, which face-to-face interview is a crucial part of, then more people could slip through those cracks, and we could see more of that happening, which would be traumatic.
I suspect on lots of things you don't agree with Amnesty International as an organisation, but I want to put you what an Amnesty spokesman suggested to me an hour ago. He said, look, when you look at how the system operates, from his perspective and his organisation perspective, he said it's very hard not to conclude that there's almost a deliberate slowing down of the system, a deliberate frustration, in a kind of vain attempt to create a deterrent. Do you think that is part of the problem with the backlog here, that it's designed to be gummed up in the hope that people will see that it could take years, they'll give up, they'll try somewhere else?
To be honest, I think that's an utterly preposterous thing to suggest. These individuals who come to the UK, they're not living a life of hardship once they arrive here. They're being put up quite frequently in 4- and 5-star hotels all around the country. They're not having to go out and work. It might not be the perfect life, it might not be the most fun, but ultimately they're getting their daily bread and they're doing all right out of it. And then there's the other point that the UK is considered the last shop saloon last stop on the asylum trail. They might have tried for other places in Europe first, and then they'll come to the UK last. So if they get turned away here or get bored of waiting, I don't really know where they would then go.
Do you, as an organisation, think there might be a case for identity cards now? Because if you look at mainland Europe, it is the case that an officer is entitled to come up to you and ask for papers. And if you are there illegally, you don't have papers. Therefore, that is quite an effective disincentive. If you get through the system, if you land on a boat and nobody picks you up, nobody has any way of checking whether or not, or who you are, or whether or not you have a right to be here, because you're not required, none of us is required to carry papers.
The case for that was probably stronger, a decade, maybe 2 decades ago, when it was a bit more novel, but we've probably already missed the boat on that, and it'd be very hard to roll those things out. And then there's also the concern over, rolling out the surveillance state to cover British citizens unnecessarily as well. So while there is a debate to be had, and we're not fully against ID cards, it's not the silver bullet that it's often suggested as being, in our opinion.
Jeremy Hutton, good to speak to you. Jeremy Hutton there from Migration Watch.